What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of E4 to Your Eternity. This is episode 7, and with me, as always, I have Blue Spade.
Um, yeah, okay. Much of the episode was mostly focused on Bond, but
Yeah,
it was really slow for the majority of this.
I'll be
Considering that,
honest. Like
yeah,
when I watched this episode, I just am not really. This is one of those series where I feel like I'm just completely checked out when I watch a new episode because I'm just not really. I don't really care much for Bond as a character, and I feel like this episode does try to make him more sympathetic, but I don't know. He just I just don't like him, and the episode just really isn't doing much. You know, they are trying to make him more of a sympathetic character, but he's still trying to do his comedic shenanigans and stuff like that, and it's. I don't know. It's I just don't really care much for him, and I don't really care what to be honest, I don't really care what's going to happen to him. So I just really was kind of bored for especially the beginning, the half of the episode, because all it is just Bond stuck in a cage with this kid that we get introduced to, who I don't know. There's kind of just this banter between the two of them, and
yeah, it's concerning about the reason why the boy is there is because he ended up stealing some bread is why he got locked up there in the first place, and he's trying to last out because he's hoping to see his mother again, but with Bond, he can see the spirits of dead people, and he can see the spirit of the boy's mother, and he straight up tells the kid that your mother's not coming back, and the boy doesn't really take it too well, so I guess gets in denial about it for the majority of the time by, I guess, saving pieces of bread for her later. But the episode just mainly focuses on them being incarcerated in these two hanging cages over like a canyon.
yeah, and at some points they try to drop the cage lower below where there's these crocodiles waiting for them below, and I guess Bond tries to break out of the cage before they before they're lowered into the water, but then they just get pulled back up.
Yeah, and of course each time the priest comes back and asks Bond if he believes in God and renounces Fushi, but it's just it's honestly, I don't know how I feel about the priest being a villain, because it just shows him off obviously they just show him off as he's being this overly righteous person, just doing horrendous things to people just to get I don't know, just to get them to admit they approve God over anything else.
Yeah, he's kind of the he just feels like one of those a stereotypical religious zealous villain, where they're just really or just one of those villains who are really power hungry, but whenever they're threatened or whenever they're in a vulnerable position, they become complete cowards, and that's kind of the entirety of this character.
Yeah, and we eventually see that Fushi does end up escaping his molten iron prison. We find out that but of course the process of how he tries to escape it is obviously painful for him, because he's constantly burning and healing numerous amount of times, according to his creator, saying that he as soon as he takes a couple breaths, he loses consciousness and then wakes up several minutes later, and the process continues over and over again, and until he finally manages to somehow escape the prison and then develop this ability in which he can become molten iron itself and then just melt things with his hands.
Yeah, I guess his creator explains that his ability has evolved because of how many times he's been burned to death, over the course of how long he was in there. I guess over the course of weeks. That's how he was able to get out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's weird. I don't know if you thought this, but when he breaks out, the image of him kind of reaching out, he's stuck in the iron block, kind of reminded me a little bit of the ending of Shin Godzilla with all those humans coming out of Godzilla's tail. Like, I don't know if that was that was the inspiration for that, but it kind of
I yeah, I think it's more a coincidence, if anything.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
there were probably other stuff, that's done this before. But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, but Fushi does eventually manage to get out by flying out of there, and then he rescues Bon, the little boy, and Toto as well. Which we need to mention that Toto has also lost weight over the course of several weeks of being in captivity, only eating bread for the majority of that time. Another thing I do want to point out is after rewatching some episodes, there was the little blonde girl that Bon meets when he was a kid. That was actually Toto, and she was the one who made the quilted handkerchief that he cherishes a lot.
Yeah, I honestly didn't really put two and two together, but that is an interesting, I guess, an interesting twist. But I can see that.
Yeah.
It could be her.
Yeah, but even when Fushi rescues both Toto and the boy, we don't really get to see Toto a lot soon after that. I mean, we only barely see her like in a far off distance. And Fushi, of course, tries to break Bon out, but Bon straight up refuses to go with Fushi because he knows that the church is going to relentlessly pursue Fushi as well as any of his friends and any family members that might be involved. So Bon really does this out of concern for the rest of his family than for Fushi himself. So you could say it's like he's made more of a like his first selfless decision after he mainly has been using Fushi for his own ends to become king of his own nation. But of course, he realizes that there's nothing he can do about it with the church, being so dedicated to go after Fushi all this time.
Yeah. I also asked this too before we started the recording, but I don't know if anybody else thought it was weird that the whole time while Bond was locked up in prison, or while Fushi was in this molten iron prison, that because as we know, like, Bond has an army of people, like, and they never really tried to rescue either of them. Kahaku knows what happened to Fushi, but he doesn't try to rescue Fushi, especially with how obsessed Kahaku is over Fushi. It's kind of hard to believe that he didn't really ever try to break him out. So I don't know. That's kind of weird to me. That
what's funny, in the last episode, he was literally there at the same location where.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he saw where Fushi was. He knows what's going on, but he never does anything.
Yeah, I mean, where the hell was he during the last several weeks?
I mean,
he's in the same location, but it's just, yeah, I had my, I was scratching my head thinking about it, but it's weird. But as for Bond's army, I guess they could still be under the command of the king
Oh, do you think the king just told him to stand down or something?
Yeah, probably. And he was the one who sent the ransom to pay, paid off the ransom to free Bond. But of course, it got rejected due to the fact that, I guess assuming the priest assumes that the money was made by Fushi himself. So I don't know. It's not really clear, but eventually Fushi escapes with both Toto and the little boy, and Bond stays behind to eventually be executed by guillotine.
Yeah. That's pretty much where the episode ends too, but of course, if you stay around after the credits to see the episode preview, it's already spoiled. Some people might think oh, well, maybe there's a possibility that Bond survived that somehow. That is confirmed that, of course, he got executed in the preview for the next episode because we see his severed head. But of course, there's always the question of, now that we know that Fushi has these abilities to resurrect people, of course, Fushi doesn't really know about it, but there's always the possibility that Fushi could just bring Bond back if he really wanted to, if he finds out about these abilities. Same with all the, I'd assume all the other people that have died, considering, yeah.
I think it's possible that, and we talked about this before, I think it's possible that Bond might have told Fushi about this during the breakout, but we don't
Mm.
really see it in this episode. It's one of those things in animes, and like we see like one part of the conversation, but we don't get to see the rest of it until in a much later episode in which a major twist happens.
Yeah.
So it's possible that with I guess the amount of time that Bond like started, I guess thinking about what's happened, and he, I guess it's possible he might have told Fushi about what he could do, and Fushi, it's possible Fushi might be able to resurrect Bond at a much later time since he knows how to do it, or
Yeah.
supposedly how he knows how to do it.
Yeah, because considering the conditions of it, are Fuchi had to have known that person in life. But yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not sure if this is like the end of a particular story arc, or if there is something else that's maybe another story arc that's going to start after this one. But I don't know. Like I honestly, like, I felt like this guy that they kind of introduced at the last second. This guy who's like a priest. He was just a very weak villain in my opinion, and he just didn't really do that much. And I never really cared much for Bond as a character or any of his family. I do think, like you said, they're probably gonna have that twist where Toto was that girl, and it's gonna be tragic because of course Bond is dead, or unless he comes back. But as far as we know, he's dead. So, but yeah, maybe there might be one more episode in this particular part of the story or the story arc, and then they might move on to another one, I guess. But that's what'll happen. But it just feels like there's not really anywhere else to go. I mean, of course, in the next episode we're gonna find out what Haku's been up to, because I remember like in the narration they said in the next episode like what happened would threaten to break up the Guardians or something. Although I'm not really sure why. I guess we'll have to find out. But I mean, considering they've been around for so long, I mean, I can't see that happening. But yeah, I don't know. As for this episode, though, I just thought it was the last episode. Like it felt like there was something was finally happening, and this one, it's just everything slowed down to a crawl because we have Bond locked up in a cage, and then we also have Fushi being imprisoned for like the majority of the episode. And what's happening while they're imprisoned, in my opinion, is just not really that interesting. And it just feels like the episode just drags on, like the pacing just slowed way down, and not much is really going on. And I don't really know where they're gonna go from here, to be honest. Like, it's I'm not sure. It's like I still have pretty mixed feelings about the season. But I'm still gonna watch the rest of it because I do kind of want to see where they're gonna go with the plot. But I really don't like what's been happening recently with certain developments with the story, and also with some of these new characters they've introduced. It's just, in my opinion, it just is not as nearly as good as what we saw in season 1.
Yeah, I just have a lot of mixed feelings. Them introducing Bond in particular. I mean, I've seen him in the in some manga panels before this, but I wasn't sure like how they're gonna end up portraying them, and I don't know. It pretty much brought my worst fears to life when they portrayed him in this series already. So I don't know. Honestly, I'm just hoping for this particular arc to just end and just move on to like another point in time in Fushi's life in which he can, I don't know, do something or whatever he's gonna end up doing now.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't really have too much else to say about the episode, though. I don't know if you have anything else to say about it.
Yeah, it's like you said, the episode just really went to a crawl after last week. I was hoping things would get better after last week, but then just went to a snail's pace with just us having to endure watching them be trapped in this like hanging prison for the majority of the episode. It just didn't really go anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah, it just feels like whenever they could, not rush through things, but sort of really condense things, they just don't. And when there are certain things that shouldn't be condensed, they really heavily condense it. I don't know. It's just really weird. But I guess we'll just have to see what happens in the next episode. So that all being said, guys, until next week, we will see you all next time.